The world outside has finally fallen silent. The bustle of the day, the noise of ambition, and the frantic chase for meaning have all retreated into the shadows. Now, it is just you and the quiet rhythm of your own breath. Lean back into the stillness. Tonight, we are not looking for information. We are looking for the keys to a door you didn't even know was locked. For over 20 centuries, these stories have been whispered in the dark, passed from master to student, not as mere tales, but as medicine for a restless soul. We begin in a land of mist and iron, where the weight of honor was heavier than a mountain. Imagine a great samurai, a man whose name was carved in the fear of his enemies. His armor clanked with the rhythm of 1,000 battles, and his pride was a sharp, jagged peak that no one dared to climb. He sought out a Zen master, not out of humility, but out of a burning curiosity to conquer the secrets of the afterlife. He found the old man sitting beneath a gnarled pine tree, a figure of such profound stillness that he seemed to be part of the earth itself. The samurai did not bow. He stood tall, his hand resting on the hilt of a blade that had tasted much blood. "Tell me, old man," he demanded, his voice a thunderclap in the peaceful grove. "What is the nature of heaven and hell?" The master did not move. He slowly opened one eye, looking at the warrior not with fear, but with a cold, biting disdain. "Why should I waste my breath on a pathetic, unwashed dog like you?" he spat. "You call yourself a warrior? You look like a beggar who found a sword in a gutter. Get out of my sight, you miserable worm." The silence that followed was suffocating. In an instant, the samurai's face turned a bruised purple. A volcano of righteous fury erupted in his chest. How dare this shriveled monk insult a man of his standing? His blade sang as it left its scabbard, a flash of cold steel rising high above the master's head, ready to split the silence and the old man's skull. The master looked directly into the warrior's blazing eyes, his voice now a whisper of infinite tenderness. "That," he said, "is hell." The blade froze in midair. The wind stopped. In that heartbeat, the samurai saw it. He saw the fire he had built with his own hands. He saw how his rage had transformed a beautiful morning into a landscape of murder and darkness. He realized that hell wasn't a pit of fire waiting for him in the future. It was the burning reality he had created inside his own skin. Tears of sudden, overwhelming clarity filled his eyes. He let the sword fall to the grass, not as a weapon, but as a discarded burden. He fell to his knees, pressing his palms together and bowing his head to the dirt in a gesture of profound gratitude. The master smiled, a warmth like the first ray of dawn spreading across his weathered face. "And that," he whispered, "is heaven." Pause for a moment. Feel the weight of your own hells. How often do you build them out of a single comment, a perceived slight or a moment of traffic? We carry these fires around, wondering why the world feels so hot. But the Master shows us that the exit is not a place, but a shift in the way we see. Now, let the mist of the samurai's mountain fade. Let us travel to the bank of a silver river, where the water flows over stones with a sound like ancient chanting. Here, a young monk, brilliant but burdened by his own intellect, walked with his teacher. This student had read every scroll, memorized every mantra, and could debate the finest points of philosophy until the stars grew pale. Yet peace eluded him. He felt like a man standing in front of a banquet, but unable to taste a single bite. "Master?" he asked, his voice tight with the strain of seeking. "What must I do to realize the truth? I have practiced for years, yet the door remains closed. What is the secret?" The master stopped walking. He pointed to a dog lying in the tall grass by the water's edge. The animal was simply there. It wasn't trying to be a better dog. It wasn't worrying about its past lives or its future enlightenment. It watched a butterfly with a soft, steady gaze, then rested its head on its paws, completely at home in the universe. "Learn from that dog," the master replied, and continued walking. The student felt a surge of bitter disappointment. He had traveled hundreds of miles, sacrificed his youth, and dedicated his life to the highest wisdom, only to be told to look at a common animal. Was this a joke? Was his master mocking his sincerity? "I didn't come here to study animals," he cried out, his voice cracking with wounded pride. "I want the profound truth. I want the light of the Buddha." The master stopped again. Further down the path, another dog was scavenging, happily chewing on a discarded scrap of food, its tail wagging with simple, unadulterated satisfaction. "Then learn from this dog," the master said, his eyes twinkling with a compassion that the student was too angry to see. The monk lost his composure entirely. "You are making a fool of me. All a dog does is eat and sleep. I want to transcend this mindless existence." The master turned, his presence suddenly filling the entire path. "You also eat and sleep," he observed quietly. "But when you eat, you are thinking of your studies. When you sleep, you are dreaming of enlightenment. The dog simply eats when it is hungry and sleeps when it is tired. It is whole. You are fragmented." He then turned and walked into his hut, leaving the student standing in the courtyard, frozen by the simplicity of a truth he had spent a lifetime trying to outrun. We are so busy trying to be special that we forget how to be real. We turn even our peace into a project, a goal to be achieved, a trophy to be won. But what if the wisdom you seek is already sitting in the grass, watching the butterflies? Listen to the silence between my words. Is there anything missing in this moment? Or is the only thing missing the you that is trying so hard to find it? Let the river carry that question away as we meet a man whose life was measured in the lives of others. A farmer, sweat-stained and trembling, burst into a quiet grove where the Buddha sat with his followers. The air was thick with the scent of wildflowers, but the farmer smelled only disaster. "Have you seen them?" he gasped, his eyes wild. "My cows, 12 of them. They broke the fence and vanished into the woods. And my sesame crops. The insects have turned them to dust. I have nothing. I am a dead man." The Buddha looked at him with a gaze that had seen 1,000 civilizations rise and fall. "We have not seen your cows, friend," he said softly. "Perhaps they went toward the valley." The farmer didn't wait. He turned and ran, his voice echoing through the trees as he called out for his lost property, a man chasing ghosts in a forest of shadows. When the sound of his panic finally faded, the Buddha turned to his monks. He smiled, a light, secret smile. "Do you know," he said, "that you are the wealthiest people on the planet? You have no cows to lose. You have no sesame crops for the insects to eat. You have released the very things that the world uses to chain its heart. We spend our lives accumulating cows. We call them careers, reputations, bank accounts, and even relationships. We tell ourselves that these things are our security, our identity, our very lifeblood. But look at the farmer. The more he owned, the more he was owned by the fear of losing it. His cows were not his wealth. They were his prison guards. The Buddha wasn't telling us to throw away our lives, but to change the grip of our hands, to hold the world like a feather rather than a stone. When you have nothing to lose, you discover a happiness that is unassailable. a peace that doesn't depend on the weather, the economy, or the behavior of others. Think of the things you are terrified of losing right now. Feel the tension in your shoulders as you think of them. That tension is the rope tied to your cows. What would happen if you simply let go of the rope? Not the objects, but the clinging to them. You would still be here. The sky would still be blue. The silence would still be deep. The monks sat in that silence, realizing that their empty bowls were full of a freedom the farmer could never buy. They were rich in presence, abundant in peace, and wealthy in the simple fact of being alive, without the weight of 12 lost cows. As the night deepens, the shadows of the trees stretch across the ground like the fingers of a giant. We often think that to find ourselves, we must go somewhere else, to a mountain, a temple, or a different life. But the samurai found his heaven in the middle of his rage. The monk found his teacher in a stray dog, and the Buddha found wealth in an empty hand. The question is not how to change your life, but how to change the one who is living it. Every moment is a crossroads between the hell of reaction and the heaven of awareness. Every breath is a choice between the panic of the farmer and the peace of the forest. The path is not in front of you. It is the very ground you are standing on. But there are deeper shadows yet to explore. Phantoms of the past that refuse to stay buried, and secrets of mastery that require us to slow down until time itself seems to stop. Consider the blade of your own attention. Is it sharp enough to cut through the illusions you have spent a lifetime building? Matajuro Yagyu stood before the legendary master Banzo, his hand hovering near the hilt of a sword that felt more like a burden than a tool of liberation. He had come to the mist-shrouded peaks of Mount Futara, not to seek the silence of the soul, but to sharpen his pride, which had been dulled by his father's cutting dismissal. "How many years?" he asked, the words tumbling out with the frantic energy of a man who views time as an enemy to be conquered. Banzo's gaze was as steady as the ancient pines, a stillness that seemed to swallow Matajuro's nervous heat. "The rest of your life," the master replied. The answer was a strike more devastating than any physical blow. To a mind obsessed with results, the idea of a lifetime spent in pursuit of a single goal feels like a prison sentence. But in the world of Zen, the hurry to arrive is the very thing that prevents us from being where we are. Matajuro, blinded by his own desperation, tried to bargain with reality. He offered his devotion, his day and night labor, and his total intensity, hoping to buy a shortcut to mastery. Yet, with every offer of increased effort, Banzo pushed the horizon further away. 10 years became 30, and 30 became 70. This is the profound paradox of the achievement mind. The ego believes that by running faster, it can outpace the natural unfolding of wisdom. But Banzo knew that a man in such a hurry to get results seldom learns anything of value. The urgency itself creates an internal tension, a static noise that drowns out the subtle rhythms of the art. When Matajuro finally lowered his head and agreed to the master's terms, he didn't realize that he was stepping into a 3-year silence where the word sword would never be spoken. He became a servant, a ghost in the dojo of his own ambitions. He washed the master's dishes until the porcelain reflected the pale mountain light. He swept the courtyard, watching the leaves fall in a dance of impermanence that he was not yet ready to understand. He tended the garden, feeling the rough soil beneath his fingernails, perhaps wondering if he had traded his heritage for the life of a scullery maid. The transformation of Mataguro did not happen through a lecture or a scroll, but through the sudden, sharp crack of a wooden sword against his ribs while he was kneeling to prepare rice. The master had become a shadow, a predator of the mundane. Every moment of Matajuro's life became infused with the possibility of an attack. Whether he was stirring soup or making a bed, he had to develop a quality of awareness that transcended thought. He had to learn to taste the sword, to sense the subtle shift in the air, the nearly silent whisper of a footstep, the very intention of a strike before it was even launched. This sharp, perpetual presence is the essence of mastery. It is the transition from doing a task to being the task. Gradually, his movements became fluid and effortless, not because he had practiced techniques, but because he had cultivated an embodied wisdom that was always awake, always responsive. He became the greatest swordsman in the land, not by reaching for the future, but by finally arriving in the present. This same mental fog, this inability to see what is right in front of us because we are haunted by what lies behind, often takes the form of shadows that refuse to stay buried. In a village where the cherry blossoms marked the seasons of love and loss, another kind of haunting was taking place. A young man, bound by a promise to his dying wife, found himself a prisoner of a memory. "Promise me," she had whispered, her love curdling into a threat with her final breath. "Do not go to any other woman. If you do, I will return as a ghost." And return she did. But she didn't just appear as a terrifying apparition. She appeared as a witness who knew everything. She knew the pattern of the silk he bought for his new beloved. She knew the exact words they whispered by the river. She knew the secrets of his heart as if she were living inside it. The terror of this ghost lay in her impossible omniscience. How can a phantom know the color of a gift hidden in a drawer? How can a spirit hear a thought that was never spoken? The man grew thin, his eyes hollow with the exhaustion of being watched even in his dreams. He sought a Zen master, not for an exorcism, but for an explanation. The master's response was a masterpiece of gentle mischief. He didn't tell the man the ghost wasn't real. He told him to admire her. "She must be a very wise ghost indeed," he mused, suggesting a bargain. The next time she appeared, the man was to ask her a single question. How many soybeans did he hold in his closed fist? That night, as the ghost wailed her accusations and displayed her supernatural knowledge, the man challenged her with the beans. The silence that followed was absolute. The ghost vanished into the moonlit air, never to return. She could not count the beans because she was not an external entity. She was the man's own guilty conscience. She knew what he knew because she was a projection of his own mind. Every detail she recounted was information already present in his own consciousness, fueled by the energy of his own shame. We often give such power to the ghosts of our past, believing they have an independent reality and an uncanny insight into our weaknesses. But like the woman in the village, these phantoms derive all their strength from us. They are the psychological mechanisms of guilt and regret, appearing to have external authority, or they are merely reflections of our own internal unrest. When we confront them with a question they cannot answer, something outside the closed loop of our own self-judgment, they dissolve back into the silence from which they came. The habit of looking outside ourselves for the source of our torment is the same habit that keeps us searching for the source of our completion. This is the cosmic joke at the heart of the journey of the 10 pilgrims. They had walked for days through treacherous mountain passes, their hearts filled with the solemn devotion of those who believe holiness lies at the end of a long road. When they came to a fierce river roaring with the violence of spring snowmelt, they crossed it with hearts pounding, forming a human chain to pull each other through the churning white water. On the far shore, soaked and shivering, the leader began to count his brothers to ensure they had all survived the passage. 1, 2, 3, 9, he cried out, his voice breaking with the sudden, sharp agony of loss. Each monk in turn counted the line, and each arrived at the same devastating number. Only 9 remained. They sat on the rocky bank and wept, mourning the brother they believed had been swept away by the merciless current. Their joy at surviving was replaced by a hollow grief, a conviction that they were no longer whole. A wise stranger, passing by and seeing 10 monks weeping over the loss of a 10th, understood the innocent mistake that was causing such unnecessary suffering. He invited the leader to count once more, and as the monk reached the number 9, the stranger pointed a finger and said, "And you are the 10th." In that moment, a profound silence fell over the group. The leader looked down at his own body, realizing that in his frantic search for his brothers, he'd forgotten to count himself. The one he was searching for was the one who was doing the searching. We are all, in a sense, that 10th pilgrim. We catalogue our achievements, our failures, our relationships, and even our spiritual progress, while completely overlooking the aware presence that makes all of it possible. We search for happiness in the next purchase, peace in the next meditation technique, and wholeness in the next relationship, all the while forgetting that the capacity for happiness is the very awareness doing the looking. This looking outside habit is a deeply conditioned tendency to seek fulfillment in external circumstances, believing that something essential is missing from our lives. But as the pilgrims found, the missing piece is never truly lost. It is simply the one place we forget to look. The stranger didn't bring back a lost monk from the river. He simply redirected the leader's attention back to the source. This recognition is what Zen calls a sudden awakening. It is not the acquisition of something new, but the cessation of the seeking that was obscuring our natural wholeness. The pilgrims continued their journey to the holy city, but their relationship to the path had changed. They were no longer desperate men trying to find something they lacked. They were whole beings moving through a world that was an expression of their own completeness. We spend so much energy inventorying our lives, counting the beans of our experiences and the ghosts of our regrets, that we fail to include the observer in the count. We treat our awareness as a transparent window through which we view the world, never realizing that the window itself is the most precious thing we possess. Tonight, as the world grows quiet and the distractions of the day begin to fade into the velvet dark, can you find the one who is listening? Can you notice the awareness that has remained constant through every story told and every breath taken? This presence doesn't need to be sharpened like a sword, and it doesn't need to be defended against the ghosts of the past. It is the 10th pilgrim, the silent witness who has been with you through every roaring river and every mountain pass, waiting for you to simply remember to count yourself. We often believe that we are the contents of our lives, the stories, the memories, the successes and the failures. But we are actually the space in which all these things arise and dissolve. But even as we find this internal anchor, the world continues to move, and our past continues to reach out with hands that seek either revenge or redemption. What happens when a life built on violence and broken honor is forced to face the mountain of its own regret. In the bustling capital city of Edo, a young man named Zengai once walked the path of the warrior, his life defined by the strict codes of the samurai. But honor is a fragile thing when faced with a tempest of human passion. Zengai became entangled in a forbidden affair with the wife of a high government official, a betrayal that shattered his vows and eventually led to a moment of irreversible violence. In a flash of steel and desperation, he killed his master and fled into the shadows of the city, a murderer bound to a woman whose heart proved as corrupt as the act that had united them. For months they lived as fugitives, their love curdling into a bitter partnership of theft and deceit. Zengai watched as the woman he had sacrificed his honor for revealed a soul consumed by greed, demanding more with every stolen coin. Finally, unable to bear the weight of his own reflection, he abandoned her and began a long, solitary wandering. He traded his sword for a beggar's bowl and his silk robes for rough hemp. Yet, no amount of physical hardship could silence the screaming guilt in his soul. His journey eventually brought him to the remote province of Buzen, where a treacherous mountain pass clung to the edge of a sheer precipice. This narrow road was a place of constant tragedy. Horses stumbled, families fell into the abyss, and the local villagers spoke of the path as a hungry mouth that never ceased its feeding. Standing at the edge of that cliff, Zengai found the purpose his shattered life had been searching for. He resolved to bore a tunnel through the solid rock of the mountain, creating a safe passage that would ensure no more lives were lost to the hungry ravine. With only primitive hand tools and a heart fueled by the need for redemption, Zengai began the impossible. Each day he begged for enough rice to survive, and each night, by the flickering light of a torch, he struck his chisel against the unyielding stone. The villagers mocked him, calling him a madman who thought he could bite through a mountain with a needle. But Zengai was not seeking their approval. He was carving away through his own darkness. 10 years passed, then 20. His hands became gnarled like the roots of an ancient pine, and his back bent under the weight of the mountain he was slowly hollowed out. 30 years into his labor, the past finally arrived in the form of a young swordsman. It was the son of the official Zengai had killed, a man who had spent his entire life honing his skill for this single moment of vengeance. When he found Zengai in the depths of the tunnel, the young man's sword was out in an instant. Zengai looked at the blade and then at the son of the man he had murdered, feeling no fear, only a deep, quiet acceptance. He asked for only one mercy, to be allowed to finish the work so that the tunnel might serve the people. Once the last stone fell, he promised, his head would be the young man's to take. The swordsman agreed to wait, but as the days turned into months, he found himself drawn into the rhythm of the work. To pass the time, he picked up a tool and began to dig alongside his enemy. He watched Zengai's tireless dedication, saw the gentleness in the old man's eyes, and felt the immense weight of a life dedicated to a single act of selfless service. By the time the final wall of rock was breached and sunlight poured through the new passage, the young man's hatred had dissolved into the very dust they had cleared. When Zengai knelt and offered his neck to the blade, the son could only weep, realizing that the man who had killed his father had become his greatest teacher. This transformation reveals a law as eternal as the stone itself. Hatred is never appeased by hatred, but by the slow, patient work of compassion. It suggests that our greatest mistakes do not have to be the end of our story. They can become the very fuel that drives us to create something of infinite benefit to others. We often believe that we must be punished to atone, but Zengai's tunnel shows us that the most profound penance is not suffering, but service. But wisdom does not always wear the rags of a penitent. Sometimes it hides behind a mask of greed, challenging our tendency to judge by surface appearances. In a mountain monastery where the mist often obscured the peaks, there lived a monk named Geshen, an artist of such extraordinary talent that his paintings seemed to pulse with life. Yet Geshen was known throughout the land as the stingy artist. He refused to pick up a brush unless he was paid in advance, and his fees were so exorbitant they scandalized the local community. One evening, a famous geisha approached him, offering a massive sum for a painting to be done during a banquet. Geshen accepted without hesitation, arriving at the house of pleasure where the air was thick with the scent of expensive incense and the sound of revelry. He painted with cold precision, while the geisha mocked him in front of her wealthy patron, calling his mind dirty and muddy with the love of money. She even went so far as to hand him her silk petticoat, commanding him to paint on it, since his work was only fit for undergarments. Geshen simply asked how much he would pay for the extra labor, took the gold, and finished the work without a word of defense. It was only after his death that the truth of his greed emerged. Geshen had been secretly funding 3 massive projects: a hidden warehouse of rice to feed the poor during the frequent famines, a new road to help pilgrims reach a distant shrine, and the completion of a temple his own teacher had died before finishing. He had allowed his reputation to be dragged through the mud, accepting the role of a villain so that he might quietly serve as a savior. We are so quick to build narratives around the behavior of others, assuming we know the why behind the what. We see a monk demanding gold, and we see greed. We see a man digging a hole, and we see madness. But Zen points to the projection mind, the tendency to interpret the world through the lens of our own preoccupations. We see what we are, not what is. This comedy of errors is perhaps most vividly captured in the story of 2 brother monks living in a remote northern temple. The elder was a brilliant scholar, while the younger was a simple man with only one eye. When a traveling monk arrived and challenged them to a silent debate on Buddhist doctrine, the elder brother, being weary, sent his one-eyed sibling in his place, instructing him to conduct the dialogue in total silence. After a few minutes, the traveler came running out of the shrine room in a state of profound awe. He told the elder brother that he had been utterly defeated by the younger monk's wisdom. "First," the traveler explained, "I held up one finger to represent the Buddha. Your brother held up 2 fingers, signifying the Buddha and his teaching. I then held up 3 fingers for the triple gem, and he shook his clenched fist in my face, showing that all 3 arise from one unified realization. His understanding is truly deep." But a moment later, the one-eyed brother came rushing out, fuming with rage. "Where is that fool?" he demanded. The moment he saw me, he held up one finger, mocking the fact that I have only one eye. I thought I should be polite, so I held up 2 fingers, congratulating him on having 2 good eyes. Then the wretch held up 3 fingers, suggesting that between us, we only have 3 eyes total. I was about to punch him for his insolence when he ran away. Identical gestures, yet 2 entirely different universes of meaning. The scholar saw philosophy because his mind was filled with texts. The simple man saw insults because his mind was filled with self-consciousness about his disability. We do this every day, don't we? We interpret a friend's silence as a slight, a stranger's glance as a judgment, or a partner's exhaustion as a lack of love. We are constantly debating with ghosts of our own making, never realizing that the opponent across from us is playing an entirely different game. This cycle of interpretation and reaction is the very wall of the prison we build for ourselves. But even the walls we use to hide our secrets can become the site of our liberation if met with the right kind of kindness. In another mountain temple, a young monk found the strict discipline of monastic life too heavy for his restless spirit. Each night, he would wait until the temple fell into silence, then use a high wooden stool to climb over the wall and escape into the bright lights and wine shops of the town below. He believed his secret was safe, always returning before the dawn prayers and replacing the stool as if he had never left. But Master Sangai, the head of the monastery, was a man of keen awareness. One evening, he discovered the stool and understood exactly what was happening. Instead of calling a meeting to shame the student or setting a trap to punish him, Sangai quietly moved the stool and stood in its place, waiting in the cold shadows of the night. Hours later, the wayward student returned, his mind still buzzing with the pleasures of the town. In the darkness, he reached up, felt what he thought was the wooden stool, and stepped heavily onto his master's head and shoulders to jump down into the courtyard. When he realized what he had done, that he had literally trampled on the dignity of his teacher, he froze in a state of absolute horror, expecting a rebuke that would end his life as a monk. Sangai, however, simply brushed the dust from his robes and looked at the boy with eyes full of genuine concern. "It is very chilly in the early morning," he said softly. "Do be careful not to catch cold yourself." Then, without another word, he walked back to his quarters. The student never climbed over that wall again. His midnight wanderings ended not because he was afraid of punishment, but because he had encountered a love so unconditional that it made his desire to escape vanish. Shame is a heavy burden, but it cannot survive in the presence of someone who refuses to judge you. We often believe that we must meet wrongdoing with consequences, but Zen suggests that genuine transformation comes from within, sparked by the realization that we are accepted even in our most hidden failures. As we sit in the stillness of the night, reflecting on these stories of tunnels carved through rock and silent debates that miss the mark, we begin to see the common thread. Whether it is the samurai seeking redemption or the master serving as a stepping stool, the path to peace is always paved with the dissolution of the ego's need to be right, to be respected, or to be separate. But as we move closer to the ultimate mysteries of life, we are eventually forced to face the one transition that no amount of service or silence can avoid. What remains of us when the body itself begins to fail and the world we have known starts to dissolve like a snowflake in the pure air? This was the question Master Basui posed in a letter to a dying disciple who was paralyzed by the terror of his own end. Basui did not offer the comfort of a heaven or the promise of a rebirth in a golden land. Instead, he pointed to the bedrock of reality that remains when all stories are stripped away. The essence of the mind is not born, so it can never die. It is not a thing that can be touched by the hands, nor is it a void that is merely empty. It has no color, no shape, no weight. It does not feast on pleasure, nor is it scarred by the deepest pain. When we are healthy and the world is bright, we easily forget this quiet witness. But in the final hour, it is the only thing that remains. Basui urged his student to look past the ravaged body, past the failing breath, and ask, what is the essence of this mind? If the student could find that, he would realize that his death was merely a snowflake dissolving into the pure air, not a disappearance into nothingness, but a return to the vast, infinite sky from which he had first crystallized. This recognition of what is truly essential often demands that we sacrifice our most cherished dreams and our very identity as spiritual people. In the mountains of Japan, during an era when the mist seemed to hold the secrets of the ancients, a monk named Tetsugan lived with a heart set on a singular, monumental task. In his time, The sacred sutras, the very words of the Buddha, were available only in complex Chinese characters that the common people could not read. Tetsugan envisioned a future where every Japanese person, from the highest lord to the lowliest farmer, could hold the wisdom of the ages in their own hands. He planned to print 7,000 copies of the entire Buddhist canon using hand-carved wooden blocks. It was a project of staggering scale, requiring a fortune that a humble monk with a begging bowl could never hope to possess. He set out with nothing but a vow and an unwavering faith. For 10 long years, he walked the dusty roads and steep mountain paths of Japan. He visited grand palaces where the floors were polished like glass, and tiny hovels where the wind whistled through the thatch. He bowed with the same profound, heartfelt gratitude to the wealthy patron who gave 100 pieces of gold as he did to the poor peasant who offered a single copper coin saved from her meager meals. Slowly, the pile of gold grew, coin by coin, year by year. After a decade of tireless effort, he finally had enough. The skilled craftsmen were engaged. The finest cherry wood was selected for the blocks. But just as the first chisel was about to touch the wood, disaster struck the region. The Uji River, swollen by rains that seemed to fall from a weeping sky, burst its banks. A catastrophic flood swept through the farmland, destroying crops, washing away homes, and leaving thousands of families to face the slow, hollow agony of starvation. Tetsugan looked at the gold he had spent 10 years collecting, money meant for the eternal preservation of the Dharma, and then he looked at the sunken eyes of the hungry children. Without a moment's hesitation, he spent every single coin on rice and relief supplies. The Sutra project, his life's work, was abandoned as completely as if it had never existed. When the waters receded and the immediate crisis passed, he did not lament his lost dream. He simply picked up his bowl and began again. Another several years of walking the same roads, another several years of bowing for copper coins. And once again, just as the goal was finally within reach, a terrible epidemic swept across the land. Once more, Tetsugan was faced with the choice between the permanent and the temporary, the spiritual monument and the immediate human pulse. Again, he chose the living. He spent the entire second fund on medicine, food, and care for the sick. It took 20 years for Tetsugan to finally publish his books. Today, those hand-carved printing blocks are preserved in the Obaku Monastery in Kyoto, a silent testament to his incredible endurance. But the people of Japan tell their children a different story about his achievement. They say that Tetsugan actually produced 3 complete sets of the sutras. The first 2, the ones that exist only in the strength of the fed and the breath of the healed, are the invisible editions. They are considered far more magnificent and sacred than the one printed on paper that can be seen and touched. He understood that the essence of the Buddha's teaching is not found in the ink of a book, but in the spontaneous, selfless response to the suffering of another. We often cling to our legacy projects, our grand plans for the future, believing they define our worth. But Tetsugan's life whispers to us that the only legacy that truly matters is the kindness we offer in the immediate now, even if it leaves no visible trace in the world. This dedication to the present moment, to the simple reality of being useful regardless of one's status, was the hallmark of Master Hyakujo. Even at the advanced age of 80, when his hair was as white as the mountain snow and his back was bent like a weathered pine tree, he could be found in the monastery gardens every single day. He did not sit on a high, ornate throne, dispensing abstract wisdom to his disciples. He raked the gravel until the lines were perfect. He pruned the fruit trees with the precision of a jeweler, and he swept the stone pathways until they were spotless. The younger monks watched their master with a mixture of deep admiration and growing concern. They could see the tools seemed heavier in his aged hands each passing year, They begged him to retire to a life of quiet contemplation. "Master," they would say gently, "you have served the Dharma for a lifetime. Let us do this heavy labor. You have earned your rest." Hayakujo would only smile, shake his head, and return to his rake. Finally, the disciples decided they must protect their master from himself. One evening, after he had retired to his quarters, they gathered all his tools, his rake, his hoe, his pruning shears, and hid them away in a place they were certain he would never find. The next morning, when Hayakujo emerged for his usual routine, he found the tool shed empty. He did not complain. He did not ask where his tools had gone. He simply sat in his room in silence, and for the next 3 days, he refused to eat. When the meal bell rang, he remained still. When the students brought him bowls of steaming rice, he looked at them with a calm, steady gaze and shook his head. By the 3rd day, the monks were genuinely terrified. They realized their master was fading, his life force ebbing away, not from age, but from a deliberate choice. In a panic, they returned the tools to their proper places. The following morning, Hayakujo was back in the garden, moving through the mist with his usual quiet focus, the sound of his rake on the gravel marking the return of the monastery's heartbeat. That evening, he finally sat down to eat with his students. After the meal was finished and the dishes were cleared, he looked at the gathered monks and spoke the words that have echoed through Zen history for centuries. No work, no food. He was not talking about a harsh economic rule or a punishment for the lazy. He was describing a spiritual law as fundamental as gravity. To be alive is to participate in the great, unfolding flow of existence. To eat is to receive the precious energy of the sun, the rain, and the earth, and that energy must be honored through a contribution to the whole. When we retire from being useful, we begin to retire from life itself. Hayakujo's fast was a demonstration that the dignity of the human spirit is found in its ability to give back to the world that sustains it, no matter how old or wise we may become. This sense of participation and the profound acceptance of life's natural cycles can even be found in the playful, sharp wit of young Ikkyu. Long before he became the famous, eccentric master who challenged the religious establishment of Japan, he was a clever boy studying in a mountain temple under a teacher who had a deep, perhaps too deep, attachment to a particular teacup. This cup was an ancient treasure, a piece of porcelain so delicate and rare that it seemed to hold the very essence of moonlight within its glaze. The master handled it as if it were a living relic, a bridge to a lost age of perfection. He would spend long minutes simply contemplating its form, his fingers tracing the rim with a reverence that bordered on obsession. One quiet afternoon, while the master was away on temple business, Ikkyu was assigned the task of cleaning the tea room. In a moment of distraction, perhaps a bird sang in the garden or a sudden draft caught the screen, the boy's elbow brushed against the shelf. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as the precious cup tilted, slid, and fell toward the floor. The sound of it hitting the wooden boards was sharp and final, like a bone snapping in the silence. It shattered into a dozen jagged, irreplaceable pieces. Ikkyu stared at the remains, feeling the cold weight of the disaster. He knew the storm of anger that was coming. He heard his master's familiar footsteps approaching along the wooden corridor. Most children would have hidden the shards or fled in a state of panic. But Ikkyu, with a presence of mind that foreshadowed his future mastery, gathered the fragments, concealed them behind his back, and waited. When the master entered the room, he noticed a strange tension in the boy's posture. Ikkyu looked up with a face of deep philosophical concern, his eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Master," he asked in a quiet, serious voice, "I have been wondering about something. Why is it that things must die? The master, pleased to see his young student contemplating such a fundamental truth of the Dharma, sat down and prepared to give a lecture. "It is the natural way of the world, Ikkyu," he explained with patient kindness. "Everything that has a beginning must have an end. Everything that is composed of parts must eventually fall apart. When its time is up, it must pass away. This is the law that even the stars must follow. Nothing can stay forever." Ikkyu nodded solemnly, as if the master's words had finally brought him peace. Then, with a slow and steady hand, he brought the shattered remains of the porcelain from behind his back and placed them at his master's feet. "Then it was time for your cup to die," he said softly. In that instant, the master's rising anger was held in check by the weight of his own words. He had been caught in the mirror of his own teaching. We all have our precious cups, the relationships we cannot imagine losing, the health we take for granted, the reputations we polish with such care every day. We speak of impermanence as an abstract concept, a beautiful idea for a poem or a sermon, but we treat our own lives and our own possessions as if they are the secret exceptions to the rule. Ikkyu's wit was not just a clever way to avoid a scolding. It was a piercing reminder that loss is not an interruption of life, but a fulfillment of it. When we stop fighting the death of things, we find a strange, quiet freedom. We begin to see that the shattering of a cup, the falling of a leaf, and even the fading of our own strength are not tragedies to be mourned, but the universe breathing in and out. If everything is destined to break, then why do we spend our limited days trembling at the thought of the inevitable? This trembling often dictates how we approach our own growth, leading us to seek paths that offer only comfort rather than transformation. In the latter years of the Tokugawa era, when the ancient ways of the East were beginning to feel the first tremors of a changing world, Master Getten sat in his mountain monastery, watching the slow parade of seekers who climbed the steep stone steps to his door. He had a sharp eye for the masks people wore, especially those who came to the temple not to change, but to feel better about staying exactly as they were. With a smile that was both compassionate and deeply amused, he would often divide his students into 3 distinct categories, a classification that remains a stinging mirror for any of us today. First, he said, are those who actually impart Zen to others, the rare souls who have truly digested the truth and can now feed the world from their own table. Then, there are those who maintain the temples and shrines, the useful, devoted people who keep the traditions alive through their service. He would always pause there, letting a heavy silence hang in the meditation hall, before delivering the final category with a glint of mischief in his eyes. "And then," he would whisper, "there are the rice bags and the clothes hangers." This description always brought a wave of nervous laughter, as each student secretly wondered if they were merely a consumer of spiritual resources, a bag that only takes in rice, a hanger that only wears the robes but never allows the teaching to penetrate the skin. Among those who refused to be a mere clothes hanger was a young man named Gasan, who sought out the notoriously severe Master Taisui. If Getten was the gentle observer, Taisui was the blacksmith's fire. His teaching methods were legendary for their harshness, designed to burn away the comfortable habits and mental patterns that keep us trapped in mediocrity. Taisui believed that spiritual development required a total breaking of the ego, and his approach was like a hammer applied to raw metal. Students who came to him expecting soft words and supportive guidance usually fled within days. The master would assign impossible tasks, offer brutal criticism of efforts that seemed perfectly adequate, and sometimes even resort to physical discipline when he sensed a student was coasting on superficial understanding. Most could not tolerate this treatment. They found reasons to leave, deciding that Taisui was too harsh, that his methods were outdated, or that they could learn better from a more compassionate teacher who would affirm their progress rather than pointing out their limitations. They sought masters who would tell them they were doing well, rather than those who would show them where they were still hiding. But Ghassan remained. He endured the full force of his teacher's uncompromising standards, and when other students complained about the master's severity, Ghassan would respond with an insight that revealed his own maturing wisdom.
A poor disciple, Ghassan would explain, is one who merely utilizes a teacher's influence, someone who wants to be seen as the student of a famous master to boost their own status. A fair disciple is one who admires a teacher's kindness, someone who stays only as long as they feel supported and praised. But a good disciple is the one who grows strong under a teacher's discipline. He understood that the most valuable gift a teacher can offer is not comfort, but the kind of pressure that forces a genuine breakthrough. Like a tree that develops deep, strong roots only by resisting the wind, Ghassan used the challenging conditions of Taesui's monastery to develop an inner strength he never knew he possessed. We often avoid the very situations and people that challenge us most deeply because our natural tendency is to seek pleasure and avoid pain. We want growth without the growing pains. We want wisdom without having our illusions challenged. But as Ghassan realized, the most valuable learning often happens at the very edge of our comfort zone. He remained available to whatever the master felt he needed, trusting that the discomfort itself was the medicine his development required. He understood that the mind is everything. What you think, you become. By reframing the master's harshness as an opportunity for strengthening, he transformed potential suffering into actual liberation. This transformation of perspective, this willingness to see the beauty in the breakdown, leads us to the gate of a bustling commercial district where the scent of silk and rare spices filled the air. Here lived a man whose success had brought him everything the world considers valuable. His warehouses were overflowing, his influence was vast, and his name was whispered with respect in every tea house. Yet despite this material abundance, a persistent anxiety gnawed at his heart, the fear that his family's prosperity was a fragile thing that would vanish like smoke after his death. He'd seen fortunes change in the blink of an eye, and he wanted something more lasting than gold to protect his lineage. Having heard of Master Sangai's wisdom and his reputation for powerful calligraphy, the merchant approached the old teacher with a request. He arrived at the modest temple wearing his finest robes, eager to commission a spiritual blessing that would become a treasured family heirloom. "Master Sangai," he said with a respectful bow, "I would like you to write something profound for the continued prosperity of my family, something that will be treasured from generation to generation, ensuring good fortune for my children and their children after them." Sangai listened with the patient attention he gave to all requests, though his eyes held a glimmer of something the merchant could not quite read. Without asking for payment, he prepared his brushes with the care of someone about to create his greatest masterpiece. The merchant watched eagerly, anticipating words about abundance, longevity, and divine protection, the kind of blessing that would look impressive hanging in his main hall. But when Sangai completed his work and turned the paper around, the merchant's face went through a series of dramatic changes. Confusion turned to shock, and then to mounting anger as he read the simple, devastating words. "Father dies, son dies, grandson dies." The merchant exploded in indignation. "I asked you to write something for the happiness of my family. Why do you make such a cruel joke? This is not a blessing, it's a curse. How could you write about death when I came seeking prosperity?" Sangai remained completely calm, his expression holding the gentle firmness of a doctor who has just delivered a bitter but life-saving medicine. "No joke is intended," he explained with quiet authority. "Consider what I have written carefully. If before you yourself die,
your son should die. This would grieve you beyond measure. The natural order would be broken, and your heart would be shattered. If your grandson should pass away before your son, both of you would be broken-hearted. To bury our children or grandchildren is the deepest suffering a human being can experience. It turns the world upside down. The merchant began to listen more carefully, the heat of his anger cooling into a chilling realization. But if your family, generation after generation, passes away in the order I have named, Sangai concluded, it will be the natural course of life. Each person will live their full span, see their children grow to maturity, experience the joy of grandchildren, and then depart when their time is complete. I call this real prosperity. As the meaning of these words settled into the merchant's consciousness, he began to understand that Sangai had given him something far more valuable than a conventional blessing. He had been offered a completely different way of thinking about what makes a life and a family truly prosperous. True prosperity might be measured not by what we leave behind, but by how completely we live within the natural cycles of existence. Our initial reaction to death is often one of failure or premature defeat, but Sangai's blessing forces us to confront our deep-seated denial of impermanence. We equate prosperity with the accumulation of things that will outlast us. Yet the greatest fortune is not avoiding death, but experiencing life in its proper rhythmic sequence. It is the blessing of a life that completes its cycle without the agony of a broken order. It means children grow up with the security of parental protection, and elders depart knowing their family line continues in peace. This teaching reframes our entire relationship to the legacies we try to build. Instead of trying to ensure our descendants will be wealthy or powerful, things that are subject to the whims of fate, we might focus on helping them live fully and love deeply while they are here. Instead of building monuments to our permanence, we might concentrate on creating meaningful relationships that honor the temporary nature of our time together. We often try to control time through our plans and our spiritual insurance, but real prosperity exists in the present moment's fullness rather than in future security. The merchant wanted comforting words about endless good fortune, but he received the challenging truth about mortality's most hidden gift. The question remains, are we building a legacy of stone that will eventually crumble, or are we cultivating a heart that can find wealth in the very rhythm of its own vanishing? This courage to face the vanishing, to love without the desperate need to possess or preserve, is perhaps most poignantly revealed at the bedside of a dying master, where compassion expresses itself not through soft comforts, but through a startling, brutal honesty. In a mountain monastery where the changing seasons marked the passage of decades and the heavy iron bells measured the rhythm of a life devoted to the eternal, Master Taisui lay dying. For years, this formidable teacher had shaped his students through an uncompromising approach to Zen, demanding nothing less than a complete and total awakening. He was a man who saw through every mask, every pretense, and every shadow of ego. Now, 3 days before what would be his final breath, Taisui was confined to his simple bed, his body finally surrendering to the illness that had been slowly claiming him for months. Despite the physical weakness that made his voice a mere whisper, his mind remained as sharp as a winter frost, still concerned with the practical matters that would ensure his lineage continued. At his bedside sat Gassan, the student he had chosen as his successor after years of rigorous, often painful testing. Their relationship had been forged in a furnace of high demands. Taesui had never coddled Gasan, and in return, Gasan had become a man capable of carrying the weight of the Dharma. Recently, a fire had destroyed one of the temples in their network, and Gasan had been working tirelessly to organize the rebuilding effort. Even as he sat by his dying teacher, the practical work of reconstruction pressed upon him. Lumber had to be ordered, craftsmen managed, and funds coordinated to restore the sacred space. As Taesui lay propped against his thin pillows, watching his successor move between these bedside vigils and his administrative duties, he asked a question that seemed simple, but carried the weight of a final test. "What are you going to do when you get the temple rebuilt?" Gasan, perhaps moved by a lingering hope for his teacher's recovery, responded with the natural assumption of a devoted student. "When your sickness is over, Master, we want you to speak there. The community is looking forward to hearing your teachings in the new hall." But Taesui had been living with the reality of his approaching end for weeks. He felt his strength ebbing like a receding tide. His question hadn't been about planning a celebration. It was a test to see if his successor could face reality without the crutch of comforting illusions. "Suppose I do not live until then?" Taesui asked. His voice carried the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had long since accepted what others spend their lives trying to avoid. Gasan's response was immediate and startlingly practical. "Then we will get someone else." There was no dramatic emotion in his voice, no desperate denial, no attempt to reassure his teacher that such thoughts were premature. He simply acknowledged the truth. If Taesui died, the temple would still need a speaker, and arrangements would be made. Taesui pressed further, perhaps testing the depth of Gasan's resolve. "Suppose you cannot find anyone suitable?" Instead of the worried speculation or the elaborate contingency plans one might expect, Gasan's response was swift and decisive. His voice rose, carrying the authority of a man who had truly internalized his master's spirit. "Don't ask such foolish questions. Just go to sleep." The words hung in the still air of the room, heavy with a meaning that went far beyond their surface rudeness. In that moment, the roles reversed. The student was now the master, telling the dying man to stop worrying about a future that had not yet arrived. Taesui smiled as he heard these words. He recognized in them the very spirit of Zen he had spent a lifetime cultivating. This was not disrespect. It was the deepest form of care. It was a love expressed through a refusal to enable unnecessary anxiety. We often mistake worry for caring, and we mistake acceptance for callousness. But as Gasan demonstrated, genuine presence sometimes requires cutting through the mental drama of hypothetical futures. Taesui was dying, and for him to spend his precious final hours worrying about who would speak at a temple was a waste of the limited time they had left together. Gasan's instruction to just go to sleep was an act of profound liberation. It was permission for the old master to let go of the responsibilities of the world, to stop the mental churning, and to enter into his final rest with a mind as clear as a mountain lake. It was the gift of treating a dying man as someone strong enough to face the end without the protection of false reassurances. This same need to cut through the illusions of the mind brings us to our final story, a moment where the high walls of intellectual philosophy were brought crashing down by a single physical act. It is the story of Yamaoka Teshu and the bamboo pipe that shattered a philosophy. In the bustling capital, Teshu had acquired a reputation as a brilliant intellectual. His mind was as sharp as a samurai's blade, capable of analyzing the most complex metaphysical concepts of emptiness and non-duality. He approached his spiritual education like a scholar, visiting master after master to demonstrate his profound understanding. On this particular day, he visited Master Dokuan, eager to display his insight. Do Kwon sat quietly in a simple room overlooking a small garden, taking leisurely puffs from his bamboo pipe. Teshu wasted no time. With the confidence of one who had mastered the texts, he began his recitation. Master, I have realized that the mind, the Buddha, and all sentient beings do not truly exist. The nature of phenomena is emptiness. There is no realization, no delusion, no sage, and no mediocrity. There is no giving and nothing to be received. These were precise, advanced teachings, delivered with the authority of someone who believed he had penetrated the heart of reality. Do Kwon listened in silence, releasing small clouds of smoke into the air. He offered no argument, no praise, no acknowledgement. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant sound of a temple bell. Then, without warning, Do Kwon raised his bamboo pipe and struck Teshu sharply across the head. The young man's philosophical composure vanished in an instant. His face flushed red, his fists clenched, and he shouted in outrage, "How dare you strike me? What kind of teacher are you? I came here in good faith, and you respond with violence." Do Kwon set down his pipe and looked at his visitor with a gentle, almost clinical attention. "If nothing exists," he inquired mildly, "where did this anger come from?" In that moment, Teshu's entire philosophical edifice collapsed. He had spent minutes explaining that nothing was real, yet he was undeniably experiencing very real anger from a very real blow dealt by a very real pipe. The gap between his intellectual understanding and his embodied experience had become impossible to ignore. His mind had mastered the concepts, but his body and emotions were still trapped in the world of reaction. This is the trap of dry enlightenment, the ability to speak eloquently about truth while remaining unchanged by it. We can memorize the most profound teachings, yet remain full of self-importance. We can know that anger is suffering, yet find ourselves furious in traffic. We can know that all things are impermanent, yet feel devastated when a precious object breaks. Do Kwon's pipe was a surgical tool, designed to reveal the gap between what Teshu thought and what he actually was. It was an invitation to move beyond the realm of ideas and into the realm of direct, undeniable experience. Tonight, as we reach the end of our journey through these 18 stories, I invite you to look back at the path we have traveled. We have seen the samurai discover that heaven and hell are not places, but states of mind. We have watched the 10th pilgrim realize that what he sought was never lost. We have felt the weight of the farmer's cows and the lightness of the stingy artist's secret generosity. Each story has been a mirror, reflecting a different part of your own consciousness back to you. Can you recognize now that the peace you have been seeking has been present all along? It is not something you need to acquire from a book or a master. It is the very awareness that is listening to these words right now. The ultimate truth these stories point toward is available in the miracle of ordinary consciousness, the silent witness that observes your thoughts, your breath, in the quiet of the night. As you continue your own path, may these truths remain with you, not as memories of stories, but as seeds of understanding that bloom in your daily life. May you recognize the empty boats of others' anger and choose not to pursue them. May you taste the sharp awareness that cuts through the illusions of past and future. And may you find, in the quiet space between your breaths, the sanctuary you have been seeking. Thank you for sharing this journey through the ancient shadows of wisdom. If these tales have brought a sense of stillness to your heart tonight, I invite you to join our community by subscribing and sharing your thoughts in the comments.
Your presence here is the final piece of this story.
May you rest deeply tonight, knowing that the search is over, because what you are seeking was never truly lost. May you wake refreshed, carrying with you the silence of the temple and the laughter of the pilgrims who found themselves whole. Rest now, in the gentle knowing that you are already home, already complete, and already free. In the pause between the ticking of the clock and the beating of your heart, you are exactly where you need to be. Good night.